Hello and welcome back to Marvel's Avengers. Today we are going to take a look at some of the game's finer points while also taking a look at my Thor build. Let's start up with looking at Thor as I grab some of these faction missions over here, and let's talk about the gameplay loop. Pretty much your gameplay loop every day is logging in and collecting faction missions from your faction vendors, checking out not the faction vendors but your faction boss leaders, and checking to see what goodies they have inside of the shop. So for instance, you can see this is a pretty good prismatic ISO 8 that they have here compared to the one that I have, which is a lower power level. So I'm gonna actually purchase that because it's got a couple of stats. Don't go ham on actually grabbing so many of those because you can see that they're pretty expensive. So let's take a look at Thor's build here. In terms of skills, you are going to pretty much be able to unlock everything that's inside of the skill tree. The big difference is going to be how you use your skills and apply them inside the specialty and mastery trees. So for instance, in the specialty tree for the support heroic, you have two trees where you can hot swap items or hot swap skills and how they these are basically like modifiers onto your skills. For me, for instance, I had Yggdrasil's Blessing. Nearby teammates recover 10% willpower every 3 seconds while ability is active. I thought that was a better ability than any of the other two in here. Like for instance, Ymir's Zaraf. Nearby teammates receive a damage boost of 25 when Warrior's Fury is activated. It's a pretty decent boost overall. I just didn't know whether or not this one was going to really help. I would switch between maybe these two. This one seems completely useless, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's so completely situational. I hope they at some point remove that completely. Nearby down teammates will be revived when Warrior's Fury is activated. Your heroic abilities have an extremely long cooldown in this game, so it's not like you're just always activating these things. It'd be cool if maybe you had the ability, but not particularly. This is highly situational usage. Next we have Warrior's Fury Specialization, and we had Asgard's Fortune. Enemies defeated while Warrior's Fury is activated has a 50% chance to drop a heroic orb. Heroic orbs are really good. They help regen your heroics a lot quicker. Then you have increased critical attack damage by 25% and critical attack chance by 10% of anyone affected by Warrior's Fury. I thought this one was the better one because in tandem with this one, it kind of gave a willpower boost and then also gave these stat boosts. I might go with these two though instead. I'm gonna try those out. And then we had Yggdrasil's Favor. Nearby teammates receive an intermittent intrinsic energy boost of 20%. I really don't know how that one would have worked, but this tree obviously has a lot more inside of it than this tree. This skill right here is just too situational. Underneath his heroic ability, we had Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm is probably the only ability under this tree that I would reasonably take. Executing God Blast is great, especially if you level up your range ratings and stuff like that. It is extremely powerful against groups of enemies, especially shielded enemies, and taking those down. Then you have God Blast. Whirlwind inflicts 20% more damage and applies cryo. These two were both based on his the Whirlwind God Blast, and yeah, I didn't really see a usage in them. Not more than being able to hold 3 charges of the God Blast, which seems to be the one heroic ability that will regen really quickly. God Blast inflicts 15% increase normal and stun damage against shocked enemies, and then God Blast inflicts 20% increased damage when triggered while overcharged. And then the one I chose was defeating enemies with God Blast refunds 5% of assault heroic energy. So this was like basically, while I used the God Blast, I was basically getting energy back for basically killing horde like mobs, and to me that was the best one. Now I have seen various threads saying that this ability is not working as intended, like you're not getting the full 5% all the time. I'm interested to see what the devs have to say about it because they haven't really commented on it yet. But let's see. This one right here seems like it's a complete situational thing in terms of his ultimate heroic. You can either have the cryo energy, the burn damage, or the Bifrost heals everyone for 10%. I've found that the 10% willpower heal doesn't really seem to last that long, so I would switch between the two of these, basically depending on the mission modifiers. Muspelheim's Torment seems to be the better of the two, just because you have a lot of cryo enemies and stages. So I would probably go with this one, but you can switch back and forth between the two of them based on the mission modifiers. I'm going to set mine back to Muspelheim. And then we have perhaps one of the bread and butter ones here, is heroic orbs restore additional 5% of ultimate heroic energy when picked up, and this is really good in terms of getting that energy back really quickly, so that way you can have other abilities. And then automatically recovers 50% of your maximum willpower when returning from the Bifrost. That's a good ability because it's basically a save me. You know, like if you're down on health already and then you trigger your ultimate heroic, you're basically getting yourself a boost and a damage proc at the same time. So I really like that one. And then automatically activate Odin Force Overcharge when returning from the Bifrost. This is really good because it also, depending on the way you build out, you can kind of set up other attacks by using that one. Now it's only going to be probably there for a good, that's like a boss fight kind of thing. Like that's where I've used it at, is once you enter the boss fight, you can trigger that ability for the ultimate heroic for the Bifrost, be overcharged, and then just ram through on a bunch of your overcharged skills. Works pretty well. I particularly like the automatically recovers the 50% of your willpower when returning, because it just kind of, like I said, it's a kind of save me. And when you're playing with pickups and stuff like that, where you're not really quite sure if people are going to play right, this one's more of a benefit. When I'm playing with friends though, however, this one is really the one that I'll go for, because I know that they have their builds where heroic orbs are being dropped from takedowns and things like that. So I would choose those when you're playing with friends, and probably this one when you're in pickup, just so that way you have a little bit of self-reliance inside that one. The last tree is Mastery, and this one has a whole lot going on inside here, but overall I would say that the trees here are pretty weak compared to the specialty tree. Like for instance, underneath melee we have increased melee stun damage by 15%. I don't really know what the base of it is. And then we have range damage, increase all range attacks by damage by 15%. And then we have light and heavy attacks, boost the energy of all heroic ability meters by 1.5 for light attacks and 2.0. Now I would switch back and forth between the two of these depending on how you play. Like if you're a completely ranged player 100% and you kind of like the hammer, which is something that's really accomplishable with Thor, you can go almost with a 1400 range rating, and throwing your hammer will pretty much one shot enemies and buy and whole. But if you are finding yourself mixing between the two, sort of what I'm doing right now, you can see my melee rating is 1422 and my range rating is 1109, then you probably want to go with something like this right here, because it's light and heavy attacks. So if you go back here, you notice that your light and heavy attacks pretty much are just your melee abilities and stuff like that. I find myself using the hammer slash quite a bit, along with the bring the thunder. I really love those abilities, so that's why I use those, because they're really good for crowd control. So this, like I said, completely dependent on how you play, but I would switch back and forth depending on what you're doing. Like sometimes I'll equip gear, my range rating will jump up higher than my melee rating, so I'll switch over to the increasing all ranged attacks. Then we have your unarmed damage, increases unarmed attacks by 15%, and then increased critical attack damage when air juggling enemies, and then increased damage from combo finishers by 25%. I can tell you right now that your unarmed attacks, they're weak period anyways, right? So they start off weak in the first place, because you're getting enemies pinned and you're punching people, and doesn't happen as much as you're gonna think with Thor, because while pinning enemies is fun, throwing the hammer is even more fun. So I would go between increasing these two. Like, I can tell you right now, Thor juggles a lot. He will lift enemies up into the air and juggle them quite a bit, or go with the combo finishers depending on how you play. Like, if you're using the light combo finishers or the heavy combo finishers, which more than likely you will be, especially if you're using like fighting shielded enemies and like challenge rating 4 and stuff, you need those combo finishers, then I would probably go with this one. But either one of these two right here, at the lower levels you tend to juggle enemies a lot, but at the higher levels it doesn't really happen as much. So I would go with I would go with the combat damage one. Next we have the takedown specialization. This is an important one, and I'm going to tell you, do not choose any of the other ones, simply because this one right here, heroic takedown, you're gonna need this one. Thor really relies, he can take a hit, but not really like you would think Thor should be able to take a hit. And to be able to regen that God Blast and the Warrior's Fury quickly and then constantly reusing those things, really important. There's a really cool setup with one of the exotics where you can really bring down the cooldown of your skills, and it really opens up the game and makes Thor feel like Thor. You could go with takedowns, recover a bonus 15% amount of willpower, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't really quite understand why they have performing a takedown spawns a regen pack and then have the recover 15% amount of willpower in the same tree. They're pretty much the same thing. I mean, the regen pack, at least somebody else could probably pick it up if they're down on health or whatever, but bar none, I'm gonna tell you that the heroic takedown mastery for takedown specialization this is going to be the one that you want. I guarantee you, especially if you're playing as Thor and you want to feel like Thor. If you really want to feel like Thor, this is it. Then we have this tree right here, the ranged attack, where we had the holding RT to charge tornado throws, cause the hammer to spawn a series of lightning. This one was really fun to play with for a little while, but I found like a lot of enemies would dodge out the way of it, so it was kind of weird. And then we had hold RT to manually target enemies while aiming tornado throw, disables the ability to pin combatants. This one wasn't it's good, right? But because you're so this is a funny thing, right? Okay, so you hold RT to manually target enemies while aiming tornado throw. You're already doing that. So I don't quite understand this skill, especially at the the take of removing my my ability to pin combatants. Like, that's one of my favorite things to see in a combatant pin, and then you have like any kind of gear equipped that's like causing damage over time while they're pinned, like cryo gear or something like that. It's awesome. Critical throw specialization. So I use this one because I like having that ability to throw, and then seeing hold RT then release precisely when the hammer flashes to guarantee the throw inflicts. This was really simple. Like, you're like holding RT or whatever to bring it up, and your hammer literally just flashes red. You throw it and it gives a critical critical attack on them, and it's really good, especially against airborne things or whatever. So next we have the critical return. This one was good because I did find that enemies would get hit by this, but there was a special condition for where this was good. So I noticed when I got my range rating up higher and I had precision gear on, that my hammer throw performed more like Cap's shield, meaning that I threw the hammer, and even if a target dodged, my hammer sought the target out, and even on return it would still seek out an enemy. I don't know if this was a bug in the game, because I noticed that when I dipped my rating back that it didn't do the same thing anymore. If it continues to operate in that way, and it was meant to operate that way, then I would say probably this is going to be the best one of the tree to have that critical attack. I still don't find the necessity to worry about the hammer throws speed, so I think this is a wasted one. It's not bad, but I don't find that the speed right now is so slow that I've ever been in a situation where I'm worried about it. This one was important. Range attacks with the hammer break through blocking enemies. The most important one, because there's a lot of shield enemies, especially when you're playing missions on challenge rating 4, that are literally blocking all the damn time, and they have shields up, and this will break right through them and allow your teammates to just literally pounce and attack on them, especially against like your shielded opponents, or like the really hard to beat adaptoids and stuff like that. This is a completely fun tree. I'm gonna tell you right now, this is a completely just fun tree. Is for flight. I don't get it. The charge flight works really well. That you get the electric charge, and that's the one I have equipped just because it's there, which is weird because underneath your primary skill tree you actually have two, right? You have star heart slam, and then you have where is it at? It's the dive. He performed. Nah, it's not that one. Where is it at? I can't find it right now, but there's a crashing dive that he does. There it is, falling star. And I can tell you right now, neither of these two things work really well. Like for some reason, when you go to do Star Heart Slam, it kind of like does a hit and has to take him up. Like even if he's already in the air, like does a hit that's just nowhere, and then it kind of comes down. And this one right here, the not to bring the thunder, where did it go? I lost it already. The falling star. This is the weirdest thing. You would think that it would auto target down to the ground, but even if you aim down towards the ground, meaning your cursor is kind of locked on the ground, he will still kind of just fly off in a straight line sometimes and horizontally. So I don't know if this is broke or what. I'm trying to play around with this more to try to understand it, but yeah, weird. So when you have that one for the traversal, it kind of helps out in case one of the two don't work. His speed burst, yeah, he already has one for B. So if you press B, he'll kind of like dash forward a little bit, and you're kind of flying really fast. And like even when I'm playing, my teammates are like, "Dude, yeah, well, we don't have the ability to fly like you do, and fly around and be so quick to areas." Yeah, so I don't really find that one necessary. And then flying shot, I'm not really wasting my Odin Force as I fly through things. Most of the time I'm stopping to either hit them or whatever. So these two skills, in my opinion, are a waste of points. I just haven't. Ionic bolts, defeating enemies while Odin Force is active, strikes nearby targets. This is a good one because it just looks cool in general, first of all, because it's just like triggering off. It looks really cool. Dealing damage while Odin Force is active will recover 12% willpower per hit. I can tell you right now, I use this one and it's really good, really good. And then you have Orb Dynamo, defeating enemies while Odin Force is active has a 25% chance to generate reach impacts for all team members. I put this one on basically because this one's kind of a selfish kind of thing where you're getting that willpower, but this one's dropping stuff so that way you have it. And typically if you use like Odin Force and do like a smash on a crowd of enemies, you can generate a number of packs. So I would probably go with this one, although if you're playing by yourself with your NPC characters or whatever, choose the other one. Then we have Maximum Force, increases the maximum amount of intrinsic Odin Force by 15%. So I went with this one mainly because I don't know what the base layers of these. So like for instance, performing a perfect dodge grants 30 points of intrinsic Odin Force energy. I hate the dodge mechanic in this game. I'm just gonna be upfront and say that it's one of on my list of things that I'll do in another video of things that need to be worked out is the dodge. It is clunky. It's a frustration. And then we have takedowns grant 30 points of intrinsic Odin Force energy. So you can switch back and forth between these two because I do find with Thor I am using quite a bit of Odin Force. I mean doing quite a bit of takedowns, but I like the maximum Odin Force simply because it just already gives me that general boost of where my maximum amount of intrinsic energy can be anyways. Next up we have the Hone Force, reduces the overall energy cost of using the intrinsic. That's really good because if I have a number of skills then I'm boosted up and now I'm like using less basically. Increases the automatic regeneration speed of intrinsic Odin Force by 12%. This could be something that you also put because obviously using 10% of a maximum amount is less than regenerating it back is 12. I'm still playing with these two. The third one right here is reduces the when you're countering against strong or unblockable attacks. So basically when you're playing against characters, there's a small circle window that pops up when they have their attacks. It's blue, yellow, and red. When it's red, that means you cannot parry. So you have to counter them, or so you're basically triggering you have to basically dodge on a red, but when it's blue or yellow, you can parry them, and that's basically summoning your Odin Force with the right trigger if you're playing on with a controller, and that a cost to do that is lessened there. I find myself rarely using it though, so no. And then the tree over here to the right, the final tree, the intrinsic overcharge. I don't know how you feel about these overcharges, because the overcharges seem to, I don't know how to say it for a better word, whether or not they activate quite a bit of time or not. But here we have power hazard. When overcharged, power attacks generate small electrical hazards. Okay, I like the lightning field the most, because when you're overcharged, surrounding enemies will be intermittently struck by lightning. When the overcharge does happen, it looks very freaking cool. Like, you can have Thor walking around, and you hear, if you have good audio, you can hear the crackle, clack, clack of the lightning hit other targets, and it's one of my favorite things to happen when the overcharge is active. So I really like that one. And then you have the explosive defense. When you have that counter and you're using it, you hit a explosive burst that's increased by 35%. I liked this one more than the other one, so that's why I went with it. But these two both are decent enough for you to use. Next we have charge resistance. Increases damage resistance by 50% when Odin Force is overcharged. This is a really good one, because Thor, like I said, Thor doesn't feel like he can take a lot of damage like you would imagine Thor to take damage. So if you are triggering off using your Odin Force, then it's pretty good. But again, it's one of those situational things where you have to be overcharged in order to get that damage reduction. So it's like a one-hitter quitter. And then we have increases willpower recovery by 2% when Odin Force is overcharged. 2% seems really low to me, so I was like, no thank you on that one. And then we have increases heroic energy regeneration when overcharges. When Odin Force is overcharged. So I went with this one because obviously it reads differently, right? But you're basically getting cooldown again for your heroic energy. So anytime that you're in Odin Force, you're then therefore regenerating the Odin Force faster, or your heroic energy faster, which means that you can use more abilities. I'm going to tell you right now that it helps, especially for God Blast. Next up, we have the damage force. Increases all damage by 15% when Odin Force is overcharged. Says enough as alone. When the Odin Force meter is full, increase the amount of overcharge energy gained on every attack by 20%. That reads weird, right? When the Odin Force meter is full, increase the amount of overcharge energy gained on every attack. So like you're literally topping off the meter that you already have for your overcharge. So you're stacking more into it, but there's a cup where it becomes full. And do you lose out at that point is the question. How often are you losing out on the cup overfilling? If you get what I'm saying. Then we have unarmed force. Increase the amount of overcharge intrinsic Odin Force energy gained by unarmed attacks by 35%. Again, this goes into one of those ability things where it's very situational, that you don't have a weapon in your hand, or you don't have the hammer in your hand, and then you have Odin Force activated, which, be honest with you, it seems like a waste in my opinion, because there's so many like, if you were able to just throw the hammer and leave a target pinned and it only came back to you upon recall, great. But a lot of times what ends up happening is you'll trigger off a combo or something like that, and the hammer is automatically recalled to you. So too situational for me, so I would go between those two skill trees. That's pretty much it in a nutshell for Thor in terms of his skill trees. That's how I've built my character. It's working out so far for me good. So far for me great. I'm currently sitting at about level 50, 138 power rating. I've kind of looked at, I'm kind of building up still in terms of where the character's going. If you can tell, I've done a lot of cryo on my characters, just because I find that the cryo, it's really like bread and butter inside the game. It helps out a lot, a really lot. I'm probably looking for something to get rid of for this glove, because I hate the third skill for ASR's breaker, where 20% increased damage from unarmed attacks. I'm not unarmed a lot, but I wanted that cryo accelerator for that light signature attack, still cryo damage. So I really like that one or whatever. And then you can tell underneath here though that I found this piece of gear, and while it's legendary, it only had 2 stats, 2 gear perks and 2 stats. And cryo casing was cryo casing and cryo wraps, so they weren't bad, so I kept that going. This is probably my favorite piece of gear that I found so far, where it says a 200% increased willpower recovery when Odin Force is active. Get that? 200%. And then we have Odin's Force Redemption, was reduce the intrinsic energy cost for suffering a guard break by 50%. And then Odin's Augur increases the maximum energy of the Odin Force meter by 10%. This was my first gear piece that I got that was at 130. I cannot see anything being better than this in this slot. If there is, then I'll switch it out, but this is bar none probably my best piece of gear that I've received so far. It does a lot for Thor in terms of his using the Odin Force and having things break off that, so I really kind of like that one. And then I just got this one right here, not so sure, I'm not so keen on it or whatever, but it's another piece of 130 gear that I have, and it's lightweight quake, 17.5% increased stun damage from light combo finishers, 28% chance activating an assault heroic grants willpower burst, and then heroic assault increases the charge rate of heroic assault ability by 15.8. So the reason why I'm showing you my gear specifically because of that bottom tree right there where it says increases the charge rate of heroic assault ability by 15.8. That is basically cooldown for your skills. The more of those abilities that you have on a piece of gear, the more you are to have the cooldown happen and you get to use those abilities more. So at 15.8%, I thought it was pretty good. You can see over here on one of my pieces of gear, I kept this one even though it was a rare gear, and you know I have another 130 gear sitting over here, but you can see I kept this one on simply because I'm increasing the charge rate of my heroic assault ability by 17.6. So between the two of them, I've roughly got about 35% heroic assault recharge ability going on here, charge rate of it going on. So those are really good to me in terms of that. This one is just being worn simply because it's a 130 stat, and I might switch it out for this one. Even though I don't like this one because the gear perks on this one really suck, but it does have 3 stats. But you can see how it's dropping my melee rating and my heroic rating significantly down, which is one of the reasons why I haven't put it on. Keep in mind that when you go for these items that you can look them up in the faction vendors, and they're usually better there. Just so you know, they're usually better there. So take a look at that and be careful. Be careful about how you spend them because they're not cheap there. And then I have the Tactagon equipped simply because I haven't finished all of the heroic quests. I would suggest that you try to finish the iconic missions and get the ring of I can't say it, but there's a ring that you get at the end, and it's you'll see it. It's the only ring that's there, and it has some really cool stats that help along with the recharge rate and reducing cooldown durations. I would highly suggest that you look at that that skill tree in terms of doing that. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing else really happening inside there. This is one of my new items that I got. Maybe I'll equip it. I haven't really figured it out yet, but we'll take a look. Once you get to about 127, 125, 127, 130, you want to start looking at how you're playing your character and items that you have inside there that are helping the way you play and the way you do things. So like how they're affecting your ratings and how they are affecting your status effects and things like that. And you want to start getting rid of gear that isn't really helping in terms of those, like equipping something that's going to reduce your range rating by 13%. If you throw your hammer a lot, it ain't going to really help you a lot. So think about those things like that in terms of that. Overall, I'm really enjoying the game so far, especially when it's triggering. Thor's been a ton of fun. I'm hoping that over the course of the week I'll be able to get him fully leveled up and fully geared in terms of getting him to 150, so that way I feel comfortable with the in-game content. Be sure that you check the vendors, especially if you're having problems where things aren't dropping pieces of gear. The vendors seem to always have them. you're gonna probably be stuck on emote on what you're getting for those. But with about a good week of play underneath my belt, I've generated probably about 9,000 in credit units, and I can tell you I've been playing the game very conservatively. I haven't like been going balls to the wall and playing 12-15 hours or anything like that. Maybe had one day where I ran through like that. And then you'll notice as well that the gear vendor, like I said, if you're finding that you can't find an item, the game's just not dropping, come check the vendor. They will typically usually have them, and it works out great. So like for instance, he has this chest piece inside here, and it's 130, has some pretty good stats, and you can see that those are some pretty good stats: resolve, resilience, proficiency, especially if you're playing with a ranged character, right? But is it going to beat those Odin Force abilities that's inside those? I don't think so. So there's a reason why I would not purchase that and equip it. You have to look at gear in terms of that. How is those gear perks helping overall? Like my chance to take damaging triggers an anti-gravity field that causes nearby enemies to float, and that's at 15. No, I'll keep my Odin Force recoveries, like I said. And you can see the gear perks on this one are 4 compared to the gear perks on the other one, which are 5. You pretty much want to be thinking of those kind of things. Other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope the insight into Thor really helps. I'm hoping to give you some of the iconic missions for Thor and some gameplay later on in a harm room to show you how skills combo together and different combo effects that you could use inside the game that will help you out even more. Until next time, guys, I've been at Dark Side. Peace.